Sophie Turner thought she was following love when she left Seattle to be with her wealthy Mexican fiancé, Alejandro Cruz, in Cancún, but behind the glittering resort he owned, she would uncover a nightmare of hidden crimes, vanished guests, and a deadly empire built on luxury and lies. Sophie Turner had always been drawn to the idea of adventure. After years of writing about other people's travels, she wanted a story of her own. When she met Alejandro Cruz during a luxury tourism event in Los Angeles, everything in her life shifted. He was confident, mysterious, and carried the calm authority of a man used to getting what he wanted. He spoke of his family's resorts along the Mexican coast and how his work revolved around creating experiences people would never forget. To Sophie, he seemed perfect, a man who lived between sunlight and saltwater, success and charm. Within months, she fell deeply in love. When Alejandro proposed that she move to Cancún to start a new life with him, it felt like destiny. He promised her a future filled with adventure, love, and purpose. He told her she could help expand his resort brand through her writing, giving her both freedom and stability. To her friends, it sounded like a dream too good to be true, but Sophie brushed off their doubts. She sold her apartment, packed her things, and boarded a plane to Mexico with her heart full of excitement. From the moment she arrived, everything seemed to glow: the golden beaches, the palm trees swaying under the sun, and Alejandro waiting for her at the airport in a crisp white shirt. His new resort, Casa del Sol, looked like paradise itself. Expensive cars lined the entrance, staff members bowed as they passed, and every corner smelled of ocean air and luxury. Sophie believed she had stepped into the life she always imagined. But when she noticed the way Alejandro's smile faded whenever his phone rang, and how certain employees avoided her gaze, a quiet unease began to whisper beneath the beauty surrounding her. The resort, Casa del Sol, quickly became Sophie's entire world. Every morning, she woke to the sound of the waves brushing against the shore and the scent of fresh orchids placed beside her bed. Alejandro told her the resort was his proudest creation, a sanctuary for the rich, famous, and discreet. Guests arrived in tinted cars, greeted by smiling staff who moved with rehearsed precision. To outsiders, the place was flawless, but Sophie soon realized perfection came with secrets carefully hidden behind polished marble walls. She began to observe things that didn't fit the image Alejandro proudly displayed. The same workers appeared on every shift, often looking exhausted but never daring to complain. Deliveries came at midnight, large, unmarked crates carried through the back gate and taken straight to the basement. When Sophie asked what they contained, Alejandro said they were just supplies, yet he quickly changed the subject whenever she pushed for more. At times, she noticed guests checking in but never seeing them again. It was easy to assume they had simply checked out early, but something about it didn't feel right. During dinners with investors, Alejandro's charm seemed to fade into something colder. He spoke about expansion, control, and competition as if hospitality were a battlefield. The men he met with were not typical businessmen, their conversations were coded, their laughter forced. One evening, Sophie accidentally overheard a conversation in Spanish that mentioned new shipments and safe transport, but when she appeared, silence fell instantly. Sophie convinced herself she was imagining things, that maybe her curiosity was clouding her happiness. But as days turned into weeks, she started to notice more: the tension in Alejandro's tone, the hushed calls after midnight, and the eerie sense that beneath the paradise surface, danger quietly waited. Sophie continued her daily routine, pretending everything was normal. She posted bright, cheerful videos for her followers, showing sunsets, cocktails, and her picture-perfect life in Cancun. Her channel began to grow rapidly, and people envied her fairy tale romance. But behind the smiles, she was growing increasingly uneasy. Guests who once appeared in her videos suddenly stopped responding to comments or messages. One couple she had befriended from Canada disappeared without a trace after a weekend at the resort. When she asked about them at the front desk, the receptionist hesitated before saying they had left early, though no one had seen them check out. A few nights later, Sophie tried to upload a vlog about the resort's operations. The next morning, her entire post had vanished. Her access to her account was temporarily locked, and an email appeared from an address claiming to be the Cancun Tourism Authority. The message warned her against spreading unverified claims that could harm local businesses. It felt too official to be a coincidence. Sophie showed Alejandro the email, expecting him to be shocked, but he only told her not to worry about things she didn't understand. His tone was calm, but his eyes were cold. Determined to understand what was happening, Sophie searched local news reports and found articles about missing tourists across the Yucatan Peninsula. Several cases involved guests who had last stayed at luxury resorts, some of them owned by Alejandro's family. The more she read, the more terrified she became. When she tried to save the links, her laptop froze, and the browser closed on its own. Later that night, she noticed a black SUV parked outside her villa, engine idling but lights off. The next morning, it was gone. That was when she realized she was being watched. Sophie's fear deepened with every passing day, but she knew she had to hide it. She acted normal around Alejandro, smiling through dinners and pretending to enjoy the glamorous parties filled with strangers she didn't trust. Her instincts told her there was something hidden beneath the resort's surface, something she wasn't supposed to see. One night, after Alejandro left for a business meeting in Tulum, Sophie decided to follow her suspicions. The resort was quiet except for the ocean wind and the faint hum of machinery. She slipped out of the suite and wandered toward the staff-only corridors she had always been told to avoid. Behind the main kitchen, she discovered a narrow hallway that led to a locked metal door. She might have ignored it, but she noticed a card scanner blinking red beside it, the same kind she'd seen on Alejandro's private office. When a tired-looking employee passed by, she quietly followed him as he swiped his card and entered. The hallway beyond led to a stairwell descending underground. The air grew colder as she moved down, the sound of the ocean replaced by the echo of distant generators. At the bottom, she found a dimly lit basement filled with surveillance monitors. Each screen showed live footage from hotel rooms, hallways, and even areas that were supposed to be private. Beside the monitors were stacks of boxes labeled with names, dates, and guest identification numbers. Some of the names matched those of missing tourists she had seen online. Her breath caught in her throat as realization sank in. This wasn't security footage, it was evidence of something far worse. Before she could look closer, she heard footsteps and muffled voices approaching. Sophie fled, racing up the stairs, heart pounding, forcing herself to act calm when she finally reached the light again. Sophie couldn't sleep after that night. The images from the basement haunted her, the names, the cameras, the eerie silence. She knew she had uncovered something dangerous, but she needed proof before anyone would believe her. When Alejandro left the next morning, she secretly began researching his family's past. What she found was more disturbing than she imagined. The Cruz family had built their empire decades ago, starting with small beachfront hotels. Officially, they were praised for transforming local tourism, but old reports hinted at corruption, smuggling, and sudden disappearances of employees who quit without notice. Each time allegations arose, the family donated heavily to local charities and the cases quietly disappeared. She traced the history of several resorts once owned by the Cruz name, all shut down after scandals that never reached the headlines. Whispers of human trafficking, money laundering, and even organ harvesting appeared in hidden forums and foreign news archives. The same pattern repeated each time. A new Cruz generation would take over, rebrand the business, and erase the past. Alejandro was the newest face of this legacy, pretending to be the visionary who modernized the empire, while in reality continuing the crimes that had funded it. Sophie's hands shook as she scrolled through faded photos of Alejandro's father, Eduardo Cruz. He had been declared missing 20 years earlier after a federal investigation into illegal trade routes connected to their resorts. Alejandro had told her his father died in an accident, but the records suggested otherwise. Some reports even hinted that Eduardo had faked his death and was still alive, operating from the shadows. Every piece of information Sophie found made her stomach twist tighter. She realized she wasn't just living with a liar, she was sharing a home with the heir of a criminal dynasty. Sophie knew she couldn't stay silent any longer. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that she was in real danger. She stopped trusting the resort staff, convinced that most of them were loyal to Alejandro's family. She needed help from someone outside, someone who understood how powerful families like the Cruz empire operated. Late one night, using a prepaid phone she had secretly bought, Sophie contacted Diego Morales, an independent journalist whose articles about resort-linked disappearances had been buried online. He agreed to meet her in a quiet cafe in downtown Cancún. There, she told him everything, from the missing guests to the basement surveillance room. Diego listened carefully and promised to help her gather evidence strong enough to expose the cruise operations. For the first time in weeks, Sophie felt hope. Together, they planned to retrieve the data hidden in Alejandro's office. Diego arranged a contact who could extract the files and send them to international authorities. But just days before they were set to act, everything began to unravel. Sophie couldn't reach Diego by phone, and his messages stopped suddenly. Later that night, she saw a report on local news about a car accident involving an unidentified journalist near the Jungle Road. Her heart froze when she recognized his vehicle. When Alejandro returned home that evening, his demeanor was unsettlingly calm. He poured wine for both of them and asked if she had been anywhere unusual that day. His tone was smooth but filled with quiet menace. That was when she realized he knew everything. Her secret meetings, the plan, the phone, all of it. The charming man she once loved was gone. In his place stood someone who could destroy anyone who betrayed him, and now, she was next. Sophie spent the next few days trapped in silent terror. Alejandro's every glance felt like a warning, his every word layered with hidden meaning. He no longer left her alone, claiming it was for her safety. Her phone vanished, her laptop password stopped working, and the guards around the villa doubled. Every exit felt watched. The illusion of paradise had fully shattered, replaced by the suffocating reality of control. She knew if she didn't act soon, she might end up like Diego, silenced and forgotten. She began studying the resort's routines carefully, watching the patterns of guards, the staff rotations, and the blind spots in the surveillance system. Alejandro trusted her enough to bring her to public events, where he flaunted her like another trophy. At one of these lavish beachfront parties, she noticed a service gate behind the stage used by catering vans. That gate became her only chance. Over the next 2 days, she packed a small bag in secret cash, her passport, and a flash drive containing the footage she had copied from the basement monitors weeks earlier. On the night of her escape, fireworks filled the sky for a resort celebration. While the crowd's attention turned upward, Sophie quietly slipped away, moving toward the gate. Her hands trembled as she forced it open just enough to squeeze through. The moment she stepped outside, she heard shouts behind her. They had noticed. She ran barefoot across the road, adrenaline drowning out her fear. A passing tourist bus slowed to avoid her, and she climbed aboard before anyone could stop her. Breathless, she hid in the back seat, heart pounding as the resort lights faded behind her. She didn't look back, knowing if she did, she might never find the courage to keep going. Months passed before the world learned the truth about what had happened behind the shining walls of Casa del Sol. It began with an anonymous leak sent to international news outlets, a series of encrypted files containing footage, financial records, and internal communications from the cruise resorts. The video showed what Sophie had seen in the basement: hidden surveillance, black market dealings, and evidence of missing tourists being trafficked through resort properties. The files spread like wildfire across social media, forcing Mexican authorities to launch a full-scale investigation. Within weeks, Casa del Sol was shut down, and law enforcement raided several other cruise properties across the country. Alejandro Cruz tried to run. Reports later revealed that he had attempted to board a private jet bound for Panama when federal agents surrounded him on the runway. Images of his arrest flooded the internet, the once celebrated businessman in handcuffs, staring blankly at the cameras. Dozens of his associates were detained, and investigators traced millions of dollars in laundered funds connected to missing person cases from multiple countries. The cruise empire collapsed overnight. Meanwhile, Sophie lived in hiding under a new identity provided by international protection services. She refused all interviews, fearing for her safety and wanting no part of the media circus that followed. Her face never appeared in any of the reports. She existed only as the whistleblower or the woman who escaped Cancún. But in her silence, she found a strange peace. She had survived what so many hadn't, and her evidence had brought justice to those who vanished. Sometimes she walked along quiet beaches far from Mexico, watching the horizon. The sound of the waves no longer comforted her, it reminded her of everything she had lost. Behind the beauty of paradise, she had seen the price of secrets.